All right. Hopefully, you guys can even hear me. But time since I even had a hangout, man. Um, the watch link is out there, so if you want to come in and join, you definitely can, and we'll take it from there. But I've just so all right. So the reason why I even wanted to have this hangout is because I came from MK. Yeah, I had a hangout with MK, and there were some Christians in there, of course, and some atheists in there, and they were having a dialogue, having a discussion, and I think where that discussion could have gone better, especially towards the end, I think there were a couple of things that would have made that conversation a lot more fruitful, and it just didn't go in the direction I thought it might have went. Um, but sorry, because I'm reading the comment. Uh, do you have Hangouts for your phone? You might be on a mobile device. So usually works better if you're on a desktop or laptop. Um, Let me see if I can summon you. Usually we just summon people in and they just come on in. But that discussion, it could have went in a direction that was way better. And I think for a few reasons, it didn't go where it was supposed to go. Um, because of those reasons. But and I'm getting tired of a lot of these conversations where there will be a theist and a non-theist, and they'll be arguing and they'll be talking back and forth. And I'm not expecting for anybody to leave their belief. I'm not expecting for an atheist to not be an atheist, nor am I expecting a Christian to not be a Christian anymore. But I mean, you would at least expect for one out of the other to walk away with something. Um, Walk away with a lesson. Walk away with I don't know. Walk away with some type of, I don't know, correction. Um, but it really is tiring seeing these conversations happen again and again and again. And I'm also so tired of seeing the same faces. I mean, my gosh, it's 2018, and I think we need a fresh face of Christian apologists, atheist antagonists. Uh, what else? I mean, even like some fresh Muslim apologists at least. I mean, man, just seeing the same faces, the same conversations, the same arguments, and it is the same argument. And I'm talking about the theists, and I'm saying this as a Christian. I'm tired of the same, especially bad arguments going against the Big Bang Theory, arguments that argue against evolution, arguments that argue for intelligent design. Terrible, terrible, terrible arguments. I am tired of it. There are ways where you can argue for your belief, for your faith, for your religion, and you don't have to argue against things that are grounded in reality. You don't have to argue against science. Um, and I've seen people do it. So I'm really tired of it. Like 2 minutes down. Um, I'm trying to figure out how you can even get in here. Message me on Hangouts. Message me on Google Hangouts, and I'll try to send you a link from there, or message me, and you can send me your email address to a Hangout message, and then I'll type your name in, and I can see if I can summon you. But I mean, there are some things you can definitely learn from people who don't believe what you believe in. And I'm talking to both atheists and Christians here. So when I was in younger creationism, and I was going around saying the Earth is 6,000 years old, and evolution is a lie, and blah blah blah. One of the biggest reasons why I stepped out of that belief is because of a couple of atheists I met. They didn't even believe in God. They were just focused on the science. They were focused on teaching people and educating people on how to come to the right scientific conclusion. And the theology to them, it didn't matter. They weren't the right people, or they weren't the people who could teach me how to accept the science and hold, to my beliefs. But what they did teach me was they taught me how to come to the right scientific conclusion, and I listened, and I was able to listen, and I was able to follow the directions that they were telling me, and I was able to go back and fact check myself. And sooner or later, um, the steps that they were telling me to execute, I definitely executed those steps. I went through the proper procedures and I changed my mind. Now, I didn't become an atheist. I'm still a Christian, still believe in God, still a theist. But I took something away from the conversation. I was able to accept at least some of the points they were telling me, because of course the point about the theological points about God and stuff like that, well, no, like I didn't accept those points. I didn't see the same conclusion as they did when it came to the God debate, right? But I definitely was able to take to task. I was definitely able to take away that, man, this science thing, I've been doing it wrong, and that's okay, because there are people who are willing to walk with me, people who are willing to show me where I was wrong and how I can come to the right conclusion. And guess what? Um, the people who I happen to have these conversations with, they were not perplexed on trying to deconvert me. They were not spending day and night, night and day, trying to convince me that God did not exist. What mattered to them was the science, and whether you wanted to argue that God used any of those scientific processes or whatever, they weren't really concerned with it. And that was that is what actually made the conversation more beneficial, because they weren't just looking to go out and deconvert people, just like Christians go around just trying to knock on people's door, or just sparking up a random conversation with somebody about religion. They actually built a real rapport with me. They built a relationship with me. And if I ever did become an atheist, it wouldn't have been because of anything they said to me. It would be because of something that I went out and I discovered on my own. It was a conclusion I came to by myself. And maybe they definitely, I could say, might have persuaded my opinion on that matter, but it wouldn't be directly. It wouldn't be because of anything they directly said to me. Never felt threatened. Never felt like they were harping on my beliefs or my religion. And I'm talking about the atheists in this community. Um, but definitely there are a lot of things that Christians can learn from atheists, and I think a lot of Christians need to take that into consideration. It's something that we don't talk about. It's something that's seen as taboo. Oh, atheists are evil, blah blah blah. Yeah, I'm checking out the chat. All right, Ozzy, I'm about to send you a message. But yeah, so in my experience, when we're dealing with at least the atheists in this community, um, the experiences have definitely, I would say, been pleasant, and they definitely have been a life changer in the sense that, I mean, my entire perspective on science and faith and etc. Is changed for the better since I've had these dialogues with atheists. My faith has actually gotten stronger, and I'm able to see a lot of atheists in a different light, because from the perspective that was originally given to me from people who were, fundamentalist evangelicals and stuff like that, the perspective I was given was that all atheists were evil and they hated God and they didn't want anything to do with religion because they were just spiteful, hateful people and blah, blah, blah. So from meeting real atheists in real time and, hearing different perspectives and what they thought about different things, a lot of atheists aren't like that at all. So I don't know where Christians get this idea from. I'm hosting from, yeah, I always host. I don't think you can host a hangout from a desktop. I mean from a phone, but yeah, I always do it from my desktop. But and as well as atheists learning things from Christians. Ozzy, I just sent you a message on Hangouts. You just gotta accept it. I sent you an invitation. Let me see if I can try something else. I think I can add you guys from the chat. I'm going to send you guys another link, and hopefully you guys can come in. All right, try that link. Let me. I'll know if it works because then you guys will be able to come in. So if it doesn't work, just let me know. But as far as atheists learning from Christians, one of the best prime examples of this in this community I can point to is a lot of atheists have had their minds changed and their opinions changed on how they see Christians just from their interactions with a good buddy of mine, General Han Solo. He definitely in this community he has been nothing but the fullest embodiment of somebody who is Christ-like, somebody who is very patient. Even with me, he's been a Christian. So Han Solo, he was one of the people who actually helped me in my walk with faith and science, and he was one of the people that helped me accept evolution. So definitely hats off to Christians like Han Solo and Jay and Fiona. Jay and Fiona, um, another embodiment of that Christian, fruitfulness from their conversations and their dialogues with atheists. Um, I mean, I know the evangelical side, the evangelical fundamentalist people, they really harp on Fiona and Jade, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, why are they always hanging around atheists? Why are they always hanging around these people? Why do these people like them so much?" But actually, I will argue that it's biblical, and I will argue it's a good thing for people who are non-believers to actually like Jade and Fiona so much. They're likable people. People want to be around them. People want to hear their input on things. People respect their opinions, and they're Christians. I will look at Jay Fiona Han Solo as people like I would compare to people like Francis Collins, Hugh Ross, Fazell Rana, um, R. Lewis, John Lennox, people who are well respected Christians, and they also are very educated, very intellectual, and very witty. And so, in that aspect, atheists can learn from Christians as well. They can see not every Christian is a crazy fundy. Not every Christian is going to always use these emotional appeal, these arguments that are just completely bad, completely argue against science, completely argue against rationality. Not every Christian is like that. So, I mean, these conversations can work in both ways. Let me see if I can post the link to you. Yeah, these conversations can work in both aspects. Uh, and I'm not expecting for anybody to change their opinion, at least from one conversation or one interaction. But over time, who knows? Maybe a Christian might be convinced to be an atheist, which I think that's not the best thing. But who knows? Maybe some atheists as well might be convinced to become Christians, and I would say that's a good thing. But I'll tell you what, no atheist will want to be a Christian if these conversations don't start getting better, and we don't start having more meaningful dialogues, and Christians don't listen. That's one of the biggest problems, especially in the last hangout I was in with MK. The Christian who was dialoguing with the two atheists, he wasn't willing, and when I say listen, he wasn't willing to take into consideration what they were trying to say. Hey, Ozzy. Oh, there you go. I thought I had muted you.
Hi, Wayne. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, baby. If you can, I don't know what's going on with the link. Could you find a way to help me out with trying to get the link to the people who want to join?
I really am very uninformed about how the Hangouts work. It used to be a lot easier. Yeah, you have to have
like now people.
Yeah, really, what you have to do is you have to create an external Google Hangout chat, and the green chat, and you have to invite people to it. You have to add people to it, but it's very hard now in G+ to add people unless you know their Gmail address or you already have a chat going with them in Google Hangouts. So
wow.
It used to be easy. You could just follow. Yeah, it used to be easy. You could just follow people, and then you could invite them if because you had followed them or added them to your G+ circles. But it doesn't work that way anymore. Now you have to have their Gmail address, it seems.
Wow. Okay, thank you. I didn't know that because I was thinking of doing it the old way, how they used to do it. People just needed the link, they click on the link, they come on in. Oh man.
Well, you can do that. You can do that, but you've got to be careful. You can't just post the link in the live chat because any old sniping fool could join and kick you out, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Thank you. All right, I added some people. Cyrus, follow me on Google Plus, and I'll follow you back and see if I can get you in here. So while I wait for that, uh, it seems like you had some, and you always have good input for things like this. But I don't know. What's your opinion? What's your thoughts?
Well, I share your frustration about constantly seeing and hearing the same voices, uh, talking and squabbling and rehashing the same old bad arguments. Um, but I mean, it's worse than just sort of repetition and hearing the same people and the same arguments. I mean, that's tolerable. It's just that those arguments tend to be so um, unproductive. I mean, it's okay to hear arguments that have been well rehearsed being reiterated over and over again, either by the same people or different people, provided that when new people come in, there's some fresh insight and you sense that there's some movement and people at least understand one another's positions. But so much of what passes for discussions in the Great Debate is simply people not actually presenting arguments that they think will persuade another person, but putting forward arguments that really are just expressions of their allegiance to what side they're on, and they're not even putting forward arguments that they think will persuade another person or even a listener, but that will simply present a veneer of intellectual respectability to their positions. A lot of apologetics and counter apologetics consists of that, of saying, listen, I hold to this line. Here are reasons how, even if they're not convincing to me or anybody else, why I hold to this line, and that's it. And it's all about sort of creating an illusion of intellectual respectability, rather than actually saying, well, this is what what has convinced me, or does convince me, or what I think should convince a rational person. But more than that, even worse than the sort of the posturing that goes on is people not listening to the other person, but just sort of waiting their turn to talk and coming out with stock rebuttals. Like, you can tell when a person has a script and is just putting forward the same old argument and the same old rebuttal, and they're hit with a counter or an objection, and they don't actually address the objection. They just come out with what they think is the next move in this game of scripted chess, right? I mean, it's kind of like playing chess where you already know what your next move is, and you know what your opponent's next move is. It's all been scripted out ahead of time, and then it's just a matter of sort of acting the part as if you're acting as if you're playing chess, when in fact you're actually not thinking about the move that was just deployed in front of you. So that's one of the things I find most frustrating. But I can think of ways that people can avoid this. I mean, one is try not to be guilty of that yourself. Try very hard to actively listen to what your opponent is saying, and try not to be loyal to your position, which is very hard. I think it actually takes a fair amount of intellectual self-discipline to do this. But try not to say things out of loyalty to your position. Try not to be so concerned about appearing disloyal to your God or disloyal to your cause. And when I say, like, loyalty to to your creed, I mean that applies equally to atheists and agnostics as it does to believers. Um, and that's obviously kind of trite advice, but I mean it's actually fundamental. It has to be the case that you are interested in hearing what the other person has to say, and you're interested in trying to address it, rather than trying to appear as if you always have an answer for anything that's put forward. Um, and another is don't put up crap from people. People put up with an awful lot of crap in Hangouts. They put up with an awful lot of misbehavior, right? I mean, we all over talk each other. I think it's normal in exchange for people to misread when a person is finished and interject to get a word in edgewise. We all sometimes interject because we think the person is going down a rabbit trail and we want to stop them because they're assuming something about a position and they're wasting a lot of time and you don't want them to waste a lot of fuel on that. So you cut them off. So a certain amount of interruption has to be accommodated, but there's an awful lot of people just over talking and rude behavior and name calling. And then people who host and moderate hangouts and discussions of this sort often pains to what should the rules be? And geez, I mean, just think of what would happen if you invited people over to your house and acted this way. You'd kick them out and never invite them back. And really, I think that that's a sort of an important thing that people have to do is when someone is being a jerk, everyone knows when you're being a dick. You know when you're being a dick, and everyone else can see. My feeling is when that's the case, you don't have to tell people you're violating the rules of ordinary civility. So I'm going to kick you out or I'm going to give you a warning. I think what you should do is just kick people out when they're being dicks and then don't let them back in. And if people see you do that a couple of times, right, just being, fairly strict and just, dismissing people, just boom, without an explanation, what happened? Oh, everyone saw what he did. He was being a dick. You don't even have to say that much. Everyone will see and everyone will know when you boot someone for being a dick, why you did it. If you don't even comment on it, right, then people will learn, oh, this is that hangout where you can't be a dick. And the dicks will have to stay out because they know they can't stay for more than 2 minutes, right? They'll just stop, right? And people who are dicks elsewhere will learn where they can be a dick and where they can't be, right? So I think that's something that moderators of hangouts and channels can do is just be fairly strict about that and not agonize over what are the rules and did I kick that person out or mute them and boot them, according to some procedure. I think people can be a little bit more cavalier about that sort of stuff. And I know that it will be abused by some people. Some people will be very one-sided, but you don't have to worry about the people who are so ideologically committed and blind and bigoted against other people that they will misapply that. You just have to worry about yourself and your own hangouts when you're hosting them and conducting them. So that would be sort of some opening suggestions.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, all. What conversation did all have? I was listening, but about how to moderate a room properly, or when it's appropriate to eject people. Is that what you guys are talking about?
I don't know if it's because your mic is so awesome or because something is not right.
You're crackling a lot, Steve.
What's that?
Yeah.
It sounds almost like a loose connection.
Yeah. That'd be bad. Still working on getting that. I had posted the link in the GDC, and people were saying it's not working.
Let's try that now. Is that better?
Way better. Way better.
Yeah,
but
Google, when you first go into it, for some reason, it doesn't always work right that first time. You have to like F5 and go back in, and it's a condition that a lot of people have noticed about it, but nobody knows what actually causes that. So, no, I was asking you guys what was your conversation when I came in. You're talking about proper moderation of channels and when it's okay to reject somebody.
Well, just how we can start having better discussions.
It's about how to have better discussions within the Great Debate, on the subject of the Great Debate. I don't mean within the Great Debate community that you own. I mean within the larger Great Debate community about questions of religion and so forth. How can we have better, more productive conversations? Because Wayne was sort of frustrated by a hangout that he was in earlier today, and so he's sort of soliciting some input on how to have better, productive conversations. And so I outlined some things that would help people. And one of them is not agonizing over what the rules are for ejecting people. Just eject people when they're dicks. Don't even tell them why. Don't apologize. Don't explain. And don't invite them back. Just you're a dick. Out you go. And
we've all had to do that.
Yeah,
it happens. It's very infrequently, but I've noticed when people need to be removed, everybody understands. You don't have to give them a reason. They know when somebody is crossed the line and needs to be removed. Right? We've all been around for a while, but I think when it comes to the Great Debate question, what else is there that hasn't been already been talked about? And so it's hard to find good dialogue on it, because at this point, I think most people have heard all the arguments. People have heard both sides of the fence, so to speak. So to have good conversation is basically just talking to people anymore. I don't know if you consider a good conversation convincing the other person that you're right. Is that a good conversation? Or just getting the other person to acknowledge that you have a legitimate argument? Is that a good conversation?
I think the second thing that you said is actually better. I think if you can just persuade a person that, look, I have reasons and you don't have to accept them. Maybe you think my premises are unsound or something like that, or maybe you think there's an error in my inferences along the way. But at least if you can credit me with some intelligence that I have arrived at this conclusion, right? As opposed to assuming that the other person, like, the big thing is the principle of intellectual charity, right? One of the things you learn when you study philosophy is that whenever you're reading an article or a book or discussing some position, you should always apply the principle of intellectual charity. It's absolutely fundamental to critical thinking, not just to philosophy, to critical thinking generally. You always have to assume that your interlocutor, the person that you're talking to, is at least as intelligent as you are. I mean, sometimes you'll think, well, that's just ridiculous. Sometimes it's just not the case. Yes, sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes you're talking to a genuine dummy, real ignoramus, okay? But you should at least assume that they could be right in principle. But even if you think that they're wrong, right, at least credit them with some intelligence and assume that they arrived at that position honestly, right? That what they're selling you isn't a pile of BS, right? That they aren't lying to you, right? And too many people assume if your conclusion is wrong, your reasons have to be terrible. Or the fallacy. If your argument is faulty, your conclusion has to be wrong. Both of those are mistakes, right? So don't, even if you think their argument is faulty and you think their conclusion is faulty, don't argue with them with something like, well, look, your argument's nonsense, right? Don't say things like that. Don't say things like, well, your conclusion is ridiculous. It's okay to say that a person's position is ridiculous if you think it's ridiculous. But if you're using that as kind of momentum in the argument against the person, all you're doing is insulting them. Right? When two people disagree, everyone knows you disagree already. There's no need to state that you think the other person's position is fatuous or anything like that, right? These are things that are just needlessly belligerent and aggressive. There's no need to characterize the other person's cognitive capacities as inferior to yours or something like that, or call them an ignoramus, right? We all know that we're dealing with people of varied intelligences, but when you proceed in an argument with someone, credit them with some intelligence, credit them with enough intellectual honesty to treat their argument seriously. And you will be surprised, I think, how that charitability in argument is rewarded. And people come back and they tend not to be so belligerent. Even a person who comes back belligerently will not be as belligerent if you went in there that way. I mean, it's so obvious to have to say this. It's almost embarrassing, but we've all gotten so used to just going in there, hammer and tongs, attacking each other, that, Steve, I'll disagree with you. I think we haven't heard all the arguments before. What we've heard is like the first tier of bad arguments back and forth. And we have a hard time getting into actually better arguments. I think you've done actually a good job with the Great Debate community and inviting guests on who are sort of a higher caliber and thought about things more deeply and tend to be a little bit more charitable, and exposing people to a better caliber of arguments on any side of the issue that you happen to be discussing. And but I think that's fundamental, is applying the principle of intellectual charity. And another reason, this is sort of a rule of thumb that I have, is be untrollable. It doesn't matter how awful they are to you, how rude they are to you. You don't have to stoop, right? One would think that it would be easy for people who self-identify as Christians to do this, because, of course, at the heart of Christianity and the Sermon on the Mount is this idea of turning the other cheek, of not returning evil for evil, but returning good for evil, and so forth. And it's actually not very hard to say, you know what? I'm going to go with dignity. I'm not going to go with honor. I'm not going to worry about how bad I look at an argument and trying to save face and stuff like that. I'm going to try to be dignified and not stoop and not yell and not get sarcastic and not editorialize and not be snarky and not try to score points and go for gotcha moments. It really is a matter of being self-possessed enough in an argument to say, I'm going to try to just be dignified. And that doesn't mean be passive aggressive and pretend to be friendly or anything like that. I'm not always friendly in Hangouts. But I always believe in being civil and being polite and being charitable, right? That pays off in huge dividends. It pays off in two ways. So the other person that you're talking to and arguing with is more likely to listen, be more receptive. The shields don't go up so much, the shields come down, tend to be more receptive. And if the other person is being belligerent and you're not, every onlooker looks at you as the rational and sensible person. And your opponent looks like the hilariously unhinged person, right? So it's so easy to just not let yourself get trolled into misbehaving. That's, I mean, when I say it's easy, it's literally easy. Just don't take the bait, right? So that would go a long way. And another is, don't waste your time arguing with people who you know can't do that and who are a complete waste of time. Just don't go back there. Just don't go back and waste. Don't invite them to hangouts. Don't join hangouts where there are hangouts where I go, oh, it's that idiot again running his script. No point in having a conversation there.
And that's exactly what I do.
You know,
I don't engage in those certain people. I don't go into their rooms. I don't go into their hangouts. Already been there, done that, and for those very reasons, there's no purpose whatsoever to join them in their discussions. I'd rather go into a room like this with someone like Wayne, who, you know, what you just described was kind of the narrative that him and I had in the past. Because a long time ago, there were some times where Wayne and we didn't see eye to eye on many things. He was a young creationist, and you know, things escalated, and it obviously had the backfire effect. But then after, you know, things became a little more normalized again, he was willing to listen. And then when I took the approach, okay, you know what, I really want you to learn this stuff. I really want to see if I could convince you that all this rhetoric that you've been putting out against evolution is just bullshit. And so I had a debate with him. And he was very open to listening, and he was open into going validating what I had said to him. And he did so, and as you know now, he's no longer a young creationist. So there is that to be said, that if you have a good conversation with somebody and you just want them to appreciate your point of view, because I mean, I didn't think I was going to convince him, but I would be like, hey, Wayne, just think, am I saying things that are rational to you? Are they saying things that are validatable to you? And he was willing to do that. So I think that's what a good conversation entails. And the fact that he actually not only listened, but took it to heart, and changed his entire theological approach to things. It doesn't happen often. It's a rare thing.
Well, I think changing
I think that's one of the differences.
Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
I think that it's okay. I've just been enjoying the conversation thus far, and I had a point to bring up, and I was like, oh, well, I can actually say something now, even though I've been really enjoying everything else so far. I guess that's the difference between somebody like Wayne or somebody like Ozzy. This is my first time seeing Ozzy in any of the chats. So it's my first time seeing you, but you seem incredibly rational. Wayne seems incredibly rational. I've seen Steve in several chats. He's incredibly rational. But that's the difference between them and, say, somebody like Pillbox, who wants to get on and wants to proselytize. He doesn't want to have a conversation. He just wants to give his point of view, whether that point of view is atheism or Hinduism or Christianity. When you come in and all you want to do is spout your point of view as hard and as fast as possible, nobody gains anything out of that. That's not a conversation. That's you asserting a whole lot of things. Whether you bring facts to the table or not, if you're going to proselytize for any reason, that's not a valid conversation, and I don't think it's really fair to the other people in the conversation when you are doing that. And yet I have seen several times in a lot of the hangouts that there are people who that's all they want to do, is instead of having a conversation with the other people, they want to come in and say, oh, Jesus, or oh, God doesn't exist, or whichever side of the fence you happen to jump on. Yeah. But neither can really assert either of those points.
They'll just lob a grenade in and see what happens, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, well, that I think is important. Sorry.
That's okay. You go ahead.
I was just going to add to what you were saying, Cyrus. There are people who are they're effectively conversational vandals. They join a hangout because they have a point or an agenda or something like that, and their ambition is simply to dominate the conversation, and sort of shut everybody out. You don't have to put up with that. You don't have to invite those people in, right? Like people say, oh, we need to stop, focusing on this person. We need to, shun this person. You don't have to recommend who needs to be shunned or anything like that. You can just say, you know what, I'm not going to talk to this idiot. This person's an idiot. It's unproductive, right? And you have to, and you shouldn't be trying to blackball people. I think this is another move I hear people do all the time. They can't get along with another person. The person has a pattern of misbehavior or something like that, and so they go and they recommend that nobody talk to this person, and that's a mistake. And I think at some point most of us have been tempted to say something like that. But there's no point. Just because you can't reach that person doesn't mean somebody else can't, right?
Well, true, and I think that goes back to your analogy about a conversation being a lot like a house. If you choose not to have somebody in your house again, you don't necessarily hop on Facebook and say, don't anybody bring this person into their house ever again. And like, no, it's an issue you personally have with them. You don't have to spread that issue to anybody else.
Right, exactly. So you don't have, and this all goes to the point about civility I was making earlier. You don't have to put up with people's incivility, but you don't have to sort of stoop to incivility yourself, and you don't have to try to blackball people. But I think it would help if people just, especially people who host Hangouts, we're cognizant of the fact that there are some bad actors out there. There are people who are conversational vandals, who just want to dominate, who just want to run a script, who just want to pwn and humiliate people. Let's stop pretending that that's going on and that that's acceptable. Just don't accept it. Just say, I'm not going to participate when that person is there. And let that person, be in the Hangout yammering, over and over again, and everyone's bored and people stop watching. And if you want better conversations, and you notice that you're having a lot of bad conversations, look at the common denominator. Chances are there's something wrong with what you're doing. You're choosing the wrong people, or you're yourself not a very good conversationalist. You find yourself rolling your eyes constantly because you're talking to idiots. Look at the common denominator, right?
Stop talking to idiots.
You stop being such an idiot and talking to all the people that you regard as idiots.
I mean,
we
do it initially. It's fun for a while. Let's be realistic. When people first get to the community, they enjoy it. Let's not try to front. Talking to stupid people sometimes it can be entertaining, but after a while, it loses its luster pretty quickly, and I mean very quickly, because there's only so much of it you can stand before you just feel like you're immersed in a sea of stupidity. And so I've long since reached that point. Right, I've said very long time ago, I'm just not bothering with some of these people any longer. If anybody else wants to be my guest, if it's something I'll watch it. If I don't want to watch it, I won't watch it. Simple as that.
Well, you mentioned not fronting. Let me say something about that. I have a little maxim that I use all the time. I love to watch the Jerry Springer Show. For those who remember what the Jerry Springer Show was,
the Jerry Springer
show.
I love watching the Jerry Springer Show, but I never wanted to be on the Jerry Springer Show.
I don't think anybody truly ever wants to.
Right. I like watching these hangouts that are these, clusterfucks, and everything falls apart, and they're hilarious to watch. I watch them too, right? They're a light form of entertainment. I'm doing the dishes, or I'm chopping vegetables for supper, and I'll have a hangout running, and I'm sort of chuckling at the hilarity of it all, right? But you don't see me in those hangouts too often,
right?
Because it's not fun to be on the Springer Show. But it's fun to watch it, right? So I'm not going to pretend that I don't see the entertainment value in it. But if you're hungering for good conversations, then listen, seek out better conversational partners and avoid those people. And do this actively. It's not that hard. I don't waste my time having a lot of stupid conversations with people, right? If I go into a room and people are just frankly disrespectful to me, I'll just absent myself at some point, leave, politely and say goodbye and thanks for the invitation, and I just don't go back. I certainly won't go back if that person's there, right? Or if those people are there. I sort of think of it as this: you get to talk to me. I think I'm a worthwhile conversational partner. It doesn't matter how much you know or don't know on a subject. Value yourself as a conversational partner, and say, okay, well, people have to get to talk to me. They have to continue to earn to be my conversational partner. You don't automatically get it just because we both happen to have joined a hangout. So I think if you proceed that way, you won't put up with so much crap, right? But I think people really sell themselves short, and I think that we get a certain satisfaction from thinking, oh, look at all these idiots around me that I have to put up with all the time, right? But that's just self-congratulation and patting yourself on the back, right? Um, one more tip, one tip maybe.
Sure.
Have more off-air hangouts with people. When I joined the Great Debate community online, the larger Great Debate community, there used to be a lot more off-air hangouts with people. And one other thing about off-air hangouts is that because people are aware that they're not in front of a live audience, that they're only having a conversation with the people present, is they don't feel that they have to front as much. They don't feel that they are in danger of losing face in front of people. They're not afraid of losing for the sake of their cause, whatever it is, right? They're not as worried about that, and consequently, they're more frank and they're more genuine in these conversations. They're more willing to concede a point, for instance. Right? So, and if you have more off-air conversations with people, you can cultivate friendships with people on the other side of the fence, right? So that when you end up in an on-air conversation, there's already a rapport there and some mutual respect that's been built up, right? You don't go in, it's not like you're just stepping into the ring for the first time and this other person is known to you only as an opponent. And then it's all about looking good in front of the audience, right?
It's not necessarily a conversation then.
Right, exactly. It's a showdown. It's a head-to-head showdown. And I've always said I don't do debates. I just do conversations. And because I think that debates are really about showmanship, and debating is a particular skill. It's a particular skill that I'm not good at. So I play to my strengths. I think I do better in just ordinary conversations. And I think those are more productive for onlookers as well, to the extent that they're genuine conversations. I had a good conversation today, actually. It's funny. Wayne said that this hangout was occasioned because he was in one of MK's hangouts and he was a little frustrated by what was going on. I was in a hangout. I think it might have been the same one, but at a different, it was like an 8-hour hangout. So I was in there at a different time, but I had a very productive conversation that went on for at least an hour with Matt Bell and Antonio Fletcher, and there were other people present, but those really were the two people that I was talking to. And we had a good, productive discussion that ranged on a whole bunch of subjects, from abortion to freedom of speech to blasphemy laws and all that. It went all over the place, right? And I thought it was interesting. It was interesting to me. I was interested in what they had to say. They, challenged me with a bunch of questions that made me think on the spot, and it was good. It was productive, right? But everybody in that conversation, the three of us, everyone was crediting the other person with intelligence. We assumed the question wasn't loaded. We assumed the question was sincere. We assumed there was intelligence behind the question. We didn't assume that everything was a trap, and no one. It wasn't a paranoid conversational experience the way some of these things are, right? And it's possible to have that with people, right? Now, in the case of Matthew Bell, he and I go back. We've had a lot of conversations. Our first interaction was just awful. It was as bad as it could be, and it was on air. But then we subsequently had a lot of off-air conversations, and when he used to host hangouts, and we built up a rapport. And even though we disagree on things, he actually has a reputation for being fairly explosive in hangouts. We have always managed to have pretty good discussions, even on air. So I think cultivating discursive partners off air goes a long way to having more productive on air conversations with people. Because a conversation, remember, is a partnership, right? I don't know what to like with. It's a bit like a dance. It takes two to tango, right? And a productive, good conversation requires that both people have the same objective in mind, and that is to understand one another's position and genuinely address one another's position, as opposed to posturing and trying to mess each other up. Right? It's the opposite of wrestling.
And if I can note real quick that I don't think anybody has an obligation to engage with anybody if they don't want to. Like if somebody came in and said, "Oh, hey Ozzy, I want to talk to you, and I have a beef for blah blah blah, or just whatever." And if something like Ozzy has dealt with before and doesn't want to talk to him, he's under no obligation to do so. And I'm the same way. I pick and choose who I want to have conversations with. And I think everybody should pick and choose who they want to have conversations with. There's no onus upon somebody to say, okay, just because you're, running a hangout or you're in a hangout, on air, off air, doesn't matter, that somebody thinks that they have an obligation to have a conversation with you, or you're obligated to have a conversation with them. There is no such obligation there.
Oh, I so agree with that. So there's so much a culture of calling people out.
Yeah.
Right. I'm calling you out and I'm challenging you, and like, what the hell is this like?
Exactly.
Is this wrestling? Is this like this sort of televised, staged wrestling? Is that what's going on here for an audience? No, don't be ridiculous. I don't stoop to that. I've had that happen to me. I've had people, I'm calling you out and stuff like that. I don't do that. I almost never name names too. I almost never, if I have a beef with someone, or, I mean, I've already alluded to some people in this conversation. I don't name names. I don't talk about people, right? Talk about ideas. The less you talk about people, the better, right? Try not to talk about persons. It's hard because it's so enjoyable, right? I mean, it's natural. We are humans. Gossip is very natural to us. And there's a place for it. But I think on the internet, on live recorded hangouts, it's not the best place for gossip. I think it's imprudent, and certainly not very productive. And it brings out the worst in us. And of course, it brings out the worst in the other person, because no one appreciates being dissed that way, right? So I absolutely agree, Steve. You can resist the temptation to be summoned because someone just named you and stuff like that. That's terrific. That would go a long way.
Yeah, and I get it quite frequently. I had I don't even know about. There's some people I don't follow them, and like one person I've never even had a conversation with before, and yet I seem to be the focus of their ire for some reason in a hangout the other day, that they had called me out kind of thing, and I'm just like, I've never had a conversation with you. What is there to call out? I don't know.
What's funny about stuff like that is that, like, the more public of a figure you become, the more strawmanned, the more easily it is for you to be strawmanned.
That's true.
And it really sucks. Like for me, as I'm in a debate chat on Kick, which I know is not like the best place to have conversations, but I've noticed that conversations flow very freely there, which is good and bad. It means poop slinging happens all the time. But I have noticed that a lot of the people that I'm in conversation with on Kick are also followers of my channel, and the people who don't like the things that I say on my channel are very vocal about it, to the point where I've received death threats just over that stuff. And it's bad, because as you do more things in the public, people see that public image as you, and 9 times out of 10 that's not the case. That's sometimes just what you have to show. Like if you're a debate moderator, sometimes what you personally think about something has nothing to do with the conversation happening at hand. You just have to sit in the back and be the third party, even if that's not really where your beliefs are, but that's where it will be perceived.
Yeah, and sometimes, like for example, when I moderate, I definitely have to intervene sometime to rephrase the question and frame it differently so that it progresses. Both the people in the debates when I moderate, nobody seems to have a problem with that, because if not, then it's just two people talking past each other, and it has to be put back on track. But you're talking about straw manning. Like the other day on Twitter, a very prominent atheist that I've known for a very long time was straw manning me, and somebody else actually noticed, and I said, look at it. I don't think this person's straw manning me on purpose, but yes, I noticed it. Other people are noticing it.
Is this the same conversation we had yesterday?
Yeah, and then and so this person was just like, well, you just seem like you're trolling me, and I'm like, I've known this person for a long time. I'm like, okay, do I go around trolling people? No. These are actually beliefs that I have. This is things that I do advocate for. These things that I'm making arguments for. That doesn't, just because you disagree with them doesn't mean that I'm trolling you. I think that's just a throwaway thing that some people say, like, oh, well, I disagree with you, therefore you're trolling, or I disagree with you, therefore your argument's wrong.
And that's incredibly confrontational. That's an incredibly confrontational.
I did take a little bit of offense to it, because there's nothing here that even it warrants a charge of trolling, and everybody that is watching this, on the Twitter can see that I'm definitely not trolling somebody. It's just that they didn't understand what I was saying, and because of that, their natural defense was to throw out a charge of being, trolling, rather than trying to understand what I was trying to tell them. And even the other people tried to help him try to understand what I was saying. They're like, let me try to explain it this way, and just wasn't going anywhere. So,
well, what's awkward about something like that, or just not necessarily about the situation on the whole, but just taking offense when somebody disagrees with you. If everyone in the world agreed with everyone on every point, we'd A, live in a very boring world, and B, I think that would be a sign that there'd be nowhere else that we could progress to,
we
because
wouldn't
the
even have
entire
channels at that point. Why?
well and
The whole reason
and
people have
the
channels is because they have differing viewpoints.
well and the entire, like, for instance, not even in the realm of philosophy, which I figure is, most of what this conversation is, but in the realm of science literally works on disagreement. One scientist says, I disagree with this, and so then they publish something and get it peer reviewed, and if they can get people to agree that their stance, which is in opposition, is correct, then they actually get fame and credibility for it. The entire thing is based on disagreeing with your peers. That's how you get famous. That's how you get funded.
But that goes back to what Ozzy was saying about intellectual charity. If you're having a conversation with somebody and they're just thinking you know what the hell you're talking about, it doesn't lead into a good conversation. And I don't get that a lot, but there are times people are like, okay, I'm not understanding what Steve's saying, therefore he must not know what the hell he's talking about. And he had other people who do know the topic.
And that's
maybe he's not articulating it properly or whatever, but we get what he's saying. So you have to take the approach to the other. It's like you have to take the charitable approach to the other person you're talking to. Is not necessarily not knowledgeable or an idiot. He just may not be formulating the argument correctly, but you can't just jump to the conclusion that they're the complete dumbass, right? You can't do that. I see that happening a lot in various hangouts, especially on like the other side, on the Christian side. And I hate to say Christians in general, but you put forth an argument to certain people in certain hangouts, and they jump on you. They think you're an idiot. Because we see it all the time.
That's like the stream, right? That was done. I don't want to say his name, obviously, but I've said his name once more. I've said his name once before already, so I'll go ahead and say it was Pillbox. When I was actually watching his live stream that he did on his channel, I figured, hey, I'm probably the only atheist who's actually watching this right now, because the chat looked like an echo chamber. So I started bringing up points as like, hey, what about this point of scripture? Hey, what about this actual part of the theory of evolution?
Mm-hmm.
And anytime I pointed out something like that, what I would expect the response would be, because he seems very genuine in some regards. I know that in other regards he seems like a complete Poe. But his knee-jerk response every single time was to laugh incredibly audibly,
mm-hmm.
to the point where it sounded like he was in tears laughing. And I'm just sitting there confused, going, well, I feel like I'm bringing up valid questions in conversation, and nobody in the chat is getting offended, so obviously I'm not saying it in a disingenuous way. But how does that merit being laughed at instead of just giving me an honest response? Because the person he
doesn't know how to have honest. You said it before.
Well, the person,
we all know. In a lot of things.
Well, true.
That's why we call it box.
Luckily, though, the person that he had in the conversation with him, because he just had a 2-person hangout that he was streaming, and that person had actually done a lot of reading on the Bible, had actually translated as much of it from Greek as they could, with the documents that they actually had available, and they were able to actually give me information that I did not know before, and that was incredibly helpful. But the actual host's responses were incredibly scoffing, while also saying that he didn't like scoffers.
Well, I'm sorry, but Pillbox doesn't know a lot about the Bible anyway. Start questioning him about the Bible and he will crumble. He is not very good.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're not wrong.
But that's the problem. Why do I wouldn't want to get in a conversation with Pillbox, mainly for the fact that I don't know what his actual positions are. So there's no reason to have a conversation with him. I want an honest interlocutor. I want somebody that believes what they believe and then wants to argue for that. That's fine. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Whether they agree with me, disagree with me, it doesn't matter. But I'm not going to waste hours of my time having a conversation with somebody who you don't even know if they're believing what they're telling you. Right?
Somebody who tells you that they don't believe in somebody that tells you they don't believe in a flat Earth, yet when you give them the definition of a flat Earther, they agree with it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just semantical nonsense games that he plays, and I have no interest in that. If I say, I'm not a flat earther, but I think the Earth is flat, but I'm not a flat earther.
All you have to do is watch someone like Pillbox interlocking with another Christian and watch him crumble. Watch him with Christian Anarchist, and Anarchist hasn't read the Bible all the way through yet, but he's studying it, right? And once Pillbox gets past like the first 2 chapters of Genesis, he doesn't know what to say.
I've never
Well, I
even
think
had a
we're-
conversation with him.
I think after that point, though, we're starting to turn into and I know I brought it up, so it's kind of disingenuous of me to say, but I don't want us to go into a pillbox roast, because that's the exact opposite of what the conversation point's supposed to be for tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
no,
I'm curious. Can I ask a question of Wayne? Like, Wayne, are we on topic? Are we sort of saying stuff that is helpful to you about this, or did you want to move in a different direction, or is this not what you're looking
You guys are good, but what I was saying before anybody even came in was just how these conversations definitely have helped me personally myself, and I've been able to meet people on both sides, whether they're atheists or non-theists, Christian, atheist, whatever. There are very good rational people on both sides of the discussion, like General Han Solo, Fiona, Jay, Steve. Even though you're not an atheist, you're an agnostic. The rest of you guys who are atheists. I mean, there are some good people on both sides, and it's just a small sect of people on I would say the far right, the right winger Christians. I really wish we could have better conversations, and I wish we could bring in new people, because I'm tired of talking to the same.
I've been trying.
Yeah.
I bring in people. We have a lot of new people that I've been bringing in, a lot of names that you've never seen before, but I'm only one person. It takes a village to bring people in, not just to the Great Debate community, but to all the channels and to the whole topic of the Great Debate. If you want new ideas, you have to get new people discussing. And I'm on Facebook all the time. I'm looking for people. I'm on G Plus. I'm on all kinds of different platforms, trying to get people to come on and talk to us. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you have to have everybody on board trying to get newer faces and new voices in.
There's something interesting about the question of bringing new people in. People are often, I've heard this for many years now, people saying, it's always the same voices and stuff like that. And you wonder, well, why is it always the same voices? I mean, people come in, why don't they stay? Well, because most people get bored by this. Most people eventually get bored. I mean, those of us who sort of stick with this and put up with a lot of repetitive prattle and squabbling from the same old actors, we have a bit of a sickness. We enjoy the Springer Show a little too much, which is perhaps why we stick with it in the hopes of those occasional good conversations. But most people are not that patient, right? So we lose people. We lose people who are. I've seen people come into the community who are like incredibly knowledgeable, and not just knowledgeable. I mean, there's some people come in who are knowledgeable, but who are just jerks who just like to bully people intellectually, right? But there are people who are incredibly knowledgeable and good conversationalists and nice people. You'd like to have them around, but they don't stick around. That's because they get bored, right? I mean, if you want, sort of, a better caliber of customer, so to speak, we have to sort of up our own behavior and not ourselves be stooping. I mean, everything sort of comes down, in my view, to how you conduct yourself. You can't control the conduct of other people. All you can do is control yourself and emulate and model the kind of behavior that you would like to see, and hope that brings out the best in the people around you. And I think it actually does bring out, better behavior in other people around that you interact with. But in any case, people will see that there's someone worth sticking around for, right? Otherwise, the only people who stick around are the people who like to watch the Springer fights, right? And there are people who, to take an expression out of Holy Spackle's vocabulary here, who like to throw gasoline around, right? There are people who, from the sidelines, like to stir stuff up.
They want to see the dumpster fire.
Exactly. And so you end up being a pawn to those people, right? Just be untrollable, right? Just don't fall for it. I mean, it's not even that hard, because all it requires is not opening your yap and saying that thing that you felt like saying in that moment. It's not that hard to resist that. But I mean, if if everybody in this room did that, already the caliber of discussions would go up to the extent that we do it whenever we do it, right? And then I think you can sort of, especially if you're hosting Hangouts, if you model the right kind of behavior, you can set the standard. You can say, this is the level of conversation. This is the level, and by level of conversation, I don't mean how knowledgeable you are, how expert you are in science or philosophy or theology or whatever, but just how you should conduct yourself, just in terms of civility. Because what the great debate conversations suffer from the most is not a lack of knowledge on certain questions, but just a lack of civility and intellectual charity. But these are values of critical thinking, the principle of intellectual charity, for instance, intellectual honesty, the ability to listen. These are values that people take on by seeing them modeled by other people and learning, oh, this is how it's done. This is how a conversation goes. You have to remember that the conversations, the shit shows that we see sometimes, that's what people think an argument about religion and politics is supposed to look like, because it's all they've ever seen. And so when they end up in a conversation themselves, they immediately fall into that because that's all they know. They think that's how it goes. They think it's acceptable, right? And you can raise that bar a little bit, right? Or maybe even raise it a lot. And it has nothing to do with how much schooling you've had and how much reading you've done, right? It has everything to do with being self-possessed enough to not stoop to being trolled and being irritable.
I guess that's just the conversational difference between an actual conversation and an argument. As long as you can maintain something being a conversation, then it won't develop into an argument.
When I first came onto the scene, I thought I was pretty idealistic, and I thought everybody matters. I mean, I really did. Like, I was a youth group leader for years, and maybe I was naive in some ways, but like I thought, everybody matters, and I can out-kind people almost. Like, if they're mean, I can out-kind them and take the beating and be nice to them, and then eventually, after 2 years of it, like, I was like, these people are maniacs. We have pedophiles, literal pedophiles, people that are in jail. We have mean, cruel people that porn bomb their, the pastor who we don't like on his show with his own daughter. We have really cruel, nasty, awful people in this community. And some people have slandered people to the point of where their work was threatened and they had to quit because of that. I mean, there are some nasty, nasty people. And so untrollable, I understand, but I also think there's some people that don't get their hands dirty. And sometimes at some point I throw up my hands and I don't know if I can say, like, oh, everybody matters. Let's all build a wall, a bridge of understanding. Eventually, I do reach a point where there's some people, like Godless Girl, where I'm willing to pour some gasoline and set it ablaze.
Well, when I say that you have to be civil and stuff like that, I am civil with everyone that I have a conversation with, okay? But I don't think that everyone matters, which is why I won't have a conversation with some people, right? There's some people who I think are such bad actors, I don't want anything to do with them. I think that they're poisonous in a discursive community, and they're not worth having around, no matter how much they know, how bright they are. They're just bad actors, right? So I have nothing to do with those people. I don't think it's important to call people out, right? You just have to not waste your time on people. I've had people who have literally begged to have conversations with me and challenged me and called me out, and I don't fall for it. I just don't go for it. I ignore them. They trash talk me behind my back. There are rumor mills going.
They write love songs to you.
They
block me.
Yeah, stuff like that. I've had memes, some funny, some unfunny, made about me. You just have to ignore it. So yes, I agree with you. There are some people that are really, really bad actors here. But I don't think it's important that you waste your time thinking that you have to denounce all these people. I mean, it's okay to say, well, I think this person's awful. I don't want anything to do with them. That's your business. but I don't think it's important. What I said earlier before you joined, I don't know if you heard it, is like the less we talk about persons, right, by name, the better. The more we talk about ideas and the less we talk about persons, the higher the caliber of discussions we're going to have. Because we all love to talk about people. We are at pains here in this conversation to not mention people, even though, I think we all recognize that there's some value in not just sitting around talking about people, right? So here we're having a conversation about how to have better conversations, and we're still, all of us fighting not to. We all know who we're talking about, right? Right? But there isn't any value in doing that. And when you bring people up and talk about them, stuff like that, you just make enemies. You inspire those people to talk about you, which will inspire you to talk about them, which will inspire some other person to come to your rescue and white knight for you and stuff like that. And it's better if none of that goes on. So I don't think that I need to be nice to everybody. I'm not nice to everybody. I categorically ignore some people, lots of people. I just ignore. I have nothing to do with them. Some people are thought of as nice people, and I have nothing to do with them. Some people are recognized as odious, and I have nothing to do with them. And then there are some people that I have nothing to do with them because I know I can't get to them. I can't have a conversation with them. And I don't mean I can't convince them of something. I mean, I can't even have a productive exchange of ideas with them, right? I can't even get them to understand my view, and I can't get them to honestly impart their view to me, right? Well, I don't say, well, no one should talk to them. I just don't waste my time by talking to them. I just let other people talk to them if they want to talk to them. So it's sort of like just sort of tend your own garden. Everybody let's all tend our own gardens. So much, I think, gets improved just by doing that. That's my view.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with that. By the way, hey, Landon, I saw you sneak in. Were you trying to make your mic work? Because nobody could hear you.
So yes, I agree with the previous speaker. There's also behaviors that are repetitive, where they're saying the same thing, and at some point, it isn't worth responding to the same message. And particularly, there's a behavior mode, where if they don't like what you say, how you respond, they'll say it again. And at some point, it's a waste of your time to respond to the same thing.
Yeah, it's beating a dead horse. I mean, how many times is going to respond to the same things over and over again? There's some channels that all they want to do is talk, and talk about people, and I just have no interest in that. If they bring up my name, I don't respond to it. I don't care to respond to every single channel out there that wants to like dart my direction. Some of them I don't even know who they are. Like, it's not just even throwing darts at me. It's like there's a channel out there that was throwing darts at Apologia, and I was like, it was just complete nonsense. And yes, I did white knight for Apologia. Not gonna lie, but the video was just crap. And so I did respond to it, but only because the information he was putting out was just so egregious, saying, Apologia doesn't do his homework when he does his videos. Well, somebody who is actually on part of his team that checks the veracity of some of his stuff, then, it's insulting to say that somebody like Apologia doesn't do his homework when he does his videos. He goes out of his way to make sure the information is correct. So there is some times that we want to respond to somebody, but you know what? I get to pick and choose what I respond to. Nobody else can do that.
Yep.
By the way, Lana,
Steve, I think I'm going to throw darts at you on my next video. I'm kidding.
Well, first you have to have a channel that people watch.
Yeah,
that's true. That's very true. I wouldn't throw darts at you anyway. I respond to ideas.
I know.
I don't think a single one of my videos is actually attached to a single person, except Greg Locke, simply because I've done 2 videos on him.
Who hasn't? I don't think.
Sure,
very true.
I don't know you, and I don't know your channel. What's the name of your channel?
It's Cyrus the Skeptic. I do a lot of video responses, mostly just if I find somebody that has a really egregious idea and they post a YouTube video on it, then I'll respond to the video.
Okay, I'll look it up. Thanks.
Yeah, see, and I'm fine with those kind of channels. I don't do a lot of that. I do it occasionally because, I enjoy the occasional. Let's look at your video and check out how bad it is. I did that with Eric's video, a guy from Think Easy. But you know what? He ended up being a really nice guy. He took the criticisms in stride, and he's going to come back, and we're going to have a productive conversation. And I thought that was awesome, right? I couldn't have asked for anything better than that. He's a young creationist that actually wants to have a dialogue. Okay, and he was real nice about it.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Irving, how are you?
That's
Good, how are
actually
you?
Really rare.
See, Irving was pretty new to the community, and she stuck around. So not everybody just takes off, like Ozzy was saying. Lana's been around for a while, but Lana, have you met Ozzy before? I don't remember.
I don't recall having a data conversation. So, hello.
Okay.
Hi. No, I've seen you before. I've seen you when you were a guest on the Great Debate Community with Steve. But no, I don't think we've had the pleasure of speaking before.
He called me from the South Pole, from with the South Pole.
Yeah, well, I remember you did a really interesting hangout that I watched. I watched it with interest actually about the eclipse.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
that was actually quite interesting. I enjoyed that.
I hope folks saw the eclipse. So one thing is, if I was also wondering if you were interested in doing, because I know you do some math stuff. I was thinking I could do a tutorial on how to find a new largest known prime, where it's not heavy in math, but it's something where potentially people get the state of the art of what it takes to do it, and reference examples of how to do something. I don't know if that's something that your channel would find interesting or not.
Who's that directed to?
People who want to go out and,
No, whose channel are you talking about?
I think for like, if there's technical communities where they putting out information about calculus, and I've seen tutorials and those sort of things.
Yeah, those got about 40 views. You mentioned math around here, and people just turn off. I don't know what it is. They have an aversion to math. They really do. A lot of people do.
There's got to be some math channels out there, though.
This is something
there are a lot of math channels out there. I mean, there's like 3 blue, one brown that I think is an amazing math channel.
Yeah, red pen, black pen is another one that's Mathologer. But this would not be a heavy math thing. This would be more probably towards people who are into computers, of what to do and how to.
I don't know who would have. I don't know off the top of my head who would have an interest. I'm sure there would be. I mean, I would. You're allowed to do anything you want on the Great Debate Community channel. You can host your own hangouts and talk about whatever you want. I would listen to it. I don't know what I would obviously have nothing to add to it. I know nothing about that subject.
Another comment that someone made that I thought was really good was you're talking about the notion of civil discourse and civil disagreement, and it's something that I've seen that's kind of sad, where behavior in public of people at a public hearing, where they seem to think it's okay to be rude, obnoxious, and do all kinds of really egregious behavior, and it's kind of sad to see, because it makes it very difficult to actually hold a public hearing and a public discussion on something.
Yeah, but they think that's what the people want to see sometimes, or they think that's how they win an argument. I mean, we've all seen ponage people where they just like go over the top to try to win arguments and stuff like that. And yeah, some of them are enjoyable, and sometimes we like seeing somebody get their one-uppings, I guess. Some just really, really egregious theist promoting things like the horrific things that like killing of gays, or talking about just whatever, so
stuff like that.
Yeah, and so we all watch these kind of things, but I think the more interesting ones that I like to watch are the ones like dealing with like when Christopher Hitzlap was talking to the rabbi, that kind of debate, right? I mean, that's when he annihilated him, but he didn't do it in a boisterous, over the top, yelling, screaming match type of way that we see a lot, and it happens in the hangouts when people try to win an argument. And I like those types of situations better. Or not. You gotta be
awkward silence.
Awkward pause. I mean, that's what I like to watch. I actually like to watch the hangouts where people have good arguments, but one person has a better argument and they're making good points rather than just having a screamy match.
Oh,
it's one of the reasons.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. My point's going to be very brief. I think it's one of the reasons that I actually stopped watching a lot of Lawrence Krauss's debates, because it seems like as much as I think he's a brilliant man, he does nothing but talk over his opponent and just denounce them instead of actually converse with them.
I've seen him on a couple things where I was like, he could have probably handled that a little bit different. But I've also seen a lot of the big names do approach conversations differently than what I would approach. But that's, it's just on. Everybody has their own dialogue, right? And I'm far from a perfect conversationalist, but I'm learning. I've gotten better over the years. At least I think I've gotten better. But it's a daily progression. You have to learn how to have more effective conversations with people. It's nothing that I think you learn or instilled with. I think you have to actually practice it like any other thing.
That's a really important point about practicing argument, and I don't mean the technical side of argument. I mean getting better at civility. Like the great debate community is like joining a community where people discuss politics, right? People come in, they're very wedded to a perspective very often, and they think ill of the other side. So it's very hard to be charitable. So I think most people, when they enter a community like that and start participating, they either up their game very, very quickly, or they have a tendency to go the other way and become less and less civil. They learn to be increasingly uncivil, right? Or they become jaded and they don't want to participate in it at all. They just want to throw gasoline around from the sidelines. And I think that's sort of normal, right? But I mean, it's possible to turn that around. It's possible to recognize, hey, you know what? I want to try to model the behavior that I would like to see. But I think you have to sort of self-consciously decide that, right? It's not just going to happen on its own. It sort of takes a certain insight and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to be the person I would want to be having a conversation with. I'm going to make the first move. I'm going to do that. So I think you're right, Steve. I think it is a skill that we learn, but most of us learn the opposite skill. We learn to become better scrappers, and that comes at the cost of being a good discursive partner, right? I mean, you get better at fighting and less good at dancing.
I think there's a need to have both. I do agree with you, but I think there's a need to have both, though. I mean, there are times you're going to be in a scrap situation, but I can handle my own in a scrap. Let's be realistic. I mean, that's how I started out. I was a lot more scrapper than conversationalist, but as you said, I made that conscious decision to move away from that. I wanted to get away from the scrappiness and do the dancing more, and I've enjoyed it much more. But sorry, go ahead, Landon.
Well, I was wondering, since Hitchens was brought up, of whether or not people's interpretation of his behavior and his, sometimes very brutal responses to people, if that didn't train a number of people in bad behavior, even though at times he could be quite civil. The what is known for is some of his brutal responses, and I'm wondering if that's actually, the wrong kind of behavior to emulate.
Well, he was skinny. Go ahead, sir.
I think that probably is a lot of it, because a lot of your big name, like for instance, a lot of your big name apologists are Matt Slick and William Lane Craig, and then a lot of your big name atheism supporters are people like Hitchens and Krauss. And I think that there's a lot of bad habits that people take from them. I think that's actually a really good point.
And just because they're role models doesn't mean you have to agree with all of them. I mean, I have my own issues with a couple of those.
You think that William Lane Craig is a bad actor?
No, I don't think he's a bad actor. I think that how he asserts his points is not necessarily constructive in some ways.
It's the influence that someone like that might have. And again, back to Hitchens, he had some very civil discussions with people that he had some respect for. But I think a lot of the best of Hitchens were taking stuff out of context, where they sort of say, this is how you be brutal and unforgiving, right? And they take Hitchens to an extreme and say that's what you got to be.
The no prisoners approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Stephen Fry.
Yeah, I mean, someone like William Lane Craig is someone I don't like. I don't like him as an apologist. I think that he is I think often I think he has to know that his arguments are BS. There's no way with his level of education and considerable erudition and sophistication, it has to be the case that he knows some of his arguments are BS. So that I don't like about it. But he is unimpeachably civil and polite. He's not always charitable, but he always at least appears to be. But he's unimpeachably polite and civil and courteous. And I mean, Hitchens could be very, very brutal in his criticisms, but he was also polite. He was very English that way, right? He could be very, very cutting. Occasionally he would be rude and he would overtalk a person. But he didn't do that a lot, right? Whereas someone like Lawrence Krauss, I think, is someone who just doesn't know how to argue and just interrupts people and overtalks people, doesn't listen, grossly mischaracterizes people, Stephen Fry, I think, is actually incredibly witty, but is so given to appeals to emotion as to be almost not worth listening to on a lot of these questions. So, so I agree with you, Landon. There's an awful lot of sort of champions of the new atheism. I've always admired the new atheists for the project of new atheism, which is being outspoken about atheism. But a lot of it has led to a kind of an attitude of deliberate belligerence, a sense that
yes,
if you're going to be a good atheist, you have to be a jerk to theists.
Yeah, I
right?
think that yes.
Which is very incorrect.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake. I think it's very counterproductive, and it plays right into the stereotype of the angry atheist.
But you made a really good point about William Lane Craig. William Lane Craig, I think, personal opinion, will knowingly use a bad argument just to win a debate.
Well, he's not alone. Hitchens did that a lot. I mean, I've seen Hitchens debate, for instance, with William Lane Craig, and I thought he got hammered by Craig. Most atheists think that Hitchens was the star in that one, but no way. I mean, I thought he came off looking really, really badly there on point after point after point. So I mean, we're all going to be sort of partisan. We're all going to see the person championing our cause or our side in a better light than they probably are. But that one I thought was sort of a clear showdown where one person just mastered the other person.
I have to watch. I don't remember.
Who would you recommend that people's behavior? Who should one emulate? Who would you recommend
on the atheist side?
Yes,
I think Sam Harris, even where I disagree with him, is always very charitable, and while at the same time not holding back in his criticism. He's not mealy-mouthed in his criticisms. He's very, very frank. He doesn't pull punches, but he's charitable. He doesn't argue against straw men. And I admire that tremendously. He's also a very gifted orator, even when he's extemporizing, which is rare. So I like Sam Harris for that. I like the lucidity of his writing. On the theist side, there's a lot of people. I'm trying to think of an apologist in particular that I like. Can't think of his name offhand. He had a debate with Bart Ehrman that was quite good. Can't think of his name. I'm going to shoot myself later. But yeah, there's plenty of theistic philosophers, for instance, that I admire. Alvin Plantinga, for instance, I think doesn't put up straw men. He is a really. I mean, I disagree with him on so much. I don't even know where to begin. But I mean that there's a rigorous mind, a first-rate mind, defending what I think is ultimately indefensible, Calvinism. But
other person I think that has I've admired how he's had civil discourse with people he disagrees with is Penn Jillette, who will also be who will give the other person the time to speak, right? Yeah, he's also a showman.
I like Penn Jillette. I think he does a good job, and he is a showman though. That's his shtick though.
But if
I've never seen him in a debate or a discussion, to be honest.
If you go see him, interact, for example, if you've ever been in a show where he goes and talks to his fans, he's not annoyed by Christians coming up and praying for him, right? He actually will say, well, thank you very much for your kindness, and no, I did, but on the other hand, so there are behaviors I think that you can go out and consider and emulate. Just try to avoid. And the same thing I think politically in the political world. There are civil people, and there are people who just get who promote just anger and yelling. So surround yourself by music rather than by caustic sound. That's what I would recommend.
Can I make a suggestion, just as a theist? Some of the observations I make on behavior. Atheists often approach me and assume the role of lecturer and teacher, and it really makes me angry. Like off the bat, I mean, I internalize it a lot. I bite my tongue a lot, but I get real irritated. And people have often said that I'm a lot more gracious to atheists than I am theists. Because theists, on the other hand, hey, little lady, if you're female or or slightly unorthodox, or if you are an atheist, they'll build morality over you. And so, like, this whole thing of like atheists are rational and theists are moral, it just drives me nuts. And it's very when you walk into a conversation where that's where we're at, it sets a mode of distrust, of defensive,ness and aggression just right off the bat.
Well, let me apologize there, because I often adopt a kind of professorial approach in speaking, because I have a background in education, and that sort of has stayed with me. I don't know. So that when I have conversations with people, I do fall into lecture mode. So let me apologize if I've done that to you.
Oh, no. Actually, you're not one of the ones I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Guilty conscience there, Ozzy.
Well, no, but I'm mindful of the fact that I do that, and I prattle on really long.
No, I don't think anybody faults you for that. I think that because they know you have a background in education, that they actually listen to what you have to say, and they can agree or don't have to agree, but they don't think that you're coming from a place of ignorance, and that's the whole thing. I mean, first is trying to be an expert on something, and they come from a point of ignorance, and why bother with them? But I think Irving had a question.
Yes, I did. I was just in a hangout, and there's this guy G-Man, right? And one of the things that really, really annoyed me, not only his loud voice.
We've never heard of him. Who is this G of which you speak?
Oh my God!
This literally was Irving's first experience with G-Man.
Yeah, just
man.
Yes, very first experience, and I just I just want to say there's a lot of stories and a lot of things that that I got really annoyed that are in the Bible, so to speak. He seems to know like a lot about it, yet he likes yelling at everyone and talking over people and not really wanting to hear what other people have to say. And when he
color me shocked.
When he has asked something, he doesn't even answer the damn question. And I got so frustrated.
Oh, why should he? What his behavior works for him. And a way to interact with him is to go tangent to where he's leading. Because if he has a behavior that he's perfected very well, and if you fall into his traps, nothing productive happens. So you got to really go tangent to the direction he wants to pull the conversation. They even have some level of dialogue.
Yeah, but like he speaks nothing but like, there's metaphors, and there's a lot of things in that book that you can't take seriously, and this guy is just my God.
His experience wasn't too good. Is that what you're saying?
And
it works very well for him, so he's very likely not to change.
Yeah, we've given up hope on that.
Yeah.
Some people are like able to grab abstract ideas often and to not be so concrete and so literal. And other people are extremely literal and concrete. He's on that concrete, literal side. And you'll find sometimes that people are driven in certain ways where they might be just attached to extreme literalism and concrete. And then also, you're going to find that some people are more fear driven. And there's been studies that say people that veer more conservative oftentimes are more fear driven. And I definitely think that's the case in theism. Listen to how he speaks and listen to the keys of how he says things. Like a father figure is disciplinarian and scares his kids. Like that is what a father figure is to him. And if you think about his spiritual life, it's very similar too. So I mean, I just think it's kind of sad because he's not alone. He's one of a few Christians I think that kind of veer towards hyper literalism and a lot of fear. And it's I don't think it's supposed to be about that.
Well, I think that G-Man is alone in that his hyperliteralism is born out of his inability to appreciate analogies, metaphor, hyperbole,
Nuance.
or just poetic language in general.
Yeah.
Well, and on that, when I wasn't in there for a lot of the conversation. Whenever G-Man was talking, I was there for maybe about 10 minutes of the Talks at Tuesday today. But when I was listening in, I heard him say a lot of, well, how would you even know that's what the Bible says? You're reading it from your eyes. You're not seeing it from
Yeah.
God's eyes. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Are you saying that you can interpret it from God's eyes?
Well-
Because that sounds incredibly arrogant.
Yeah, well, the sad thing about it that we were talking about today on TST was that nowhere in the Bible is it clearly and coherently defined the extent and the content of God's knowledge.
Yes,
Yes,
that is correct.
there is a singular passage in Psalms that says something to the effect of, God knows all things, with God all things are possible. But that doesn't define what it is that God knows.
True, and not to mention,
And it's
that
also
doesn't-
explicitly poetic, which you ought to take as hyperbolic.
yeah, you can't look at that and just go, this means omniscient, done, pack it up.
Yeah, there are other verses that you could infer omniscience from, and like people often think of like the omni properties as consisting of three things, like omniscience, omnipotence, and omnibenevolence. But there are other omni properties that you can infer from passages in the Bible as well, like omnitemporality. Omnipresence is another one, and there's two other omniproperties that I'm blanking on at the moment. It's just those three typically are the focus of conversation, but they're not the only ones that a god of classical theism would possess.
Well, and I think to guide the conversation back to where Wayne probably wants us to be, it seems that the major point to pull from this is that you can't be so concrete in your assertions on what any theological text reads, such as to prevent yourself from being able to have a conversation about it. And I think that's what happened with the little bit of TST that I watched today, is that he was so concrete on what he believed something said that he was unable to talk about it. He was only able to yell about it.
Well, it was just that he has a dogmatic attitude towards it, such that anything that even has a semblance of dissent, even when it's agreeing with him, has to be wrong.
Yeah,
It
And
must
it
be
has to
stomped
shut
out.
down.
Yeah, well, they've all taken that approach now. A lot of them have taken the approach that they cannot be wrong. Therefore, whatever person is talking to them, that other person must be in the wrong if they're telling them something that conflicts with their worldview. They're starting to approach it that way. And I think it's a very disingenuous way to approach it, because when it comes to theological things, I'm sorry, there is no concreteness there. It is, you have a belief, you have a faith. That's fine, not judging that. But to say that God does this, or God wants this, or God wants that, I don't think anybody has a clue what the hell God wants if he exists. They read what they think it is, and they hope it's the best. It's a good interpretation of it. But
Well, and we have MRI studies that prove that. We have MRI studies that prove that whenever somebody tries to say what God thinks, the part
They're
of the
talking
brain
about
that
what
says
they
what I
want.
think, the part of the brain that says what I think is always the
Oh,
part
there's
that
a lot of
lights
it.
up.
I'm not going to even try to argue against that. I believe that when people say God wants this, they're using God as a vehicle for their own
I
wants.
thought it was creativity, the area for creativity lit up. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to look it up.
The area of creativity lights up, but as does the area of self-reference.
The me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And
Yeah, I think there's
Freudian terms.
The id, the super id, the ego. Yeah.
I think it's the id because I heard the reference of Donald Trump as Twitter's id made manifest.
There was actually
that seems to make sense.
Did you ever watch Forbidden Planet? That was the storyline behind that. No spoilers.
Oh God!
But it was really good. Hey, that was one of the best science fiction movies ever made. First color science fiction. I think it was the first science fiction color movie. First color movie. Period.
Forbidden Planet. I had that weird music. That woo music.
I don't know. You just gave me an awesome idea for a science fiction novel where a social media site basically compiles, like we know that social media sites use algorithms to determine what it is that people might be amenable to. And so it advertises certain things towards them.
Well, there you go, Nicola. There's your next book.
Well, the book would be that eventually it takes all of these various ideas.
Can I be a character? Can I be a character?
You're a character in like 2 books that I'm writing right now, so you can shut the fuck up. But like, I don't know, you could imagine.
Do I die either way?
Some kind of like search engine that has this sort of assessment algorithm of what people like and what they don't like could eventually develop some kind of ascensions and just start marketing things directly and intentionally to people to control them and persuade them to do things that it wanted to do or that it thought would be ideal for them.
Well, folks, I need to go and do sciencey things. It's been a fun discussion.
I have to go and do like eating things because I haven't eaten all day, and I got way too much Chardonnay last night, and so I'm still not up to par. Wine hangovers. Oh man, bad.
Wine's the worst. Wine's the worst.
Rum and Coke is a bitch, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the rum has sugar in it too, right? But the wine, the sweetness of it, just the hangovers are the nastiest.
I don't know why you did rum and Coke night on Monday. I don't know. I got like I got an invite at 11 p.m. and I caught maybe 5 minutes of it. Where I don't know the guy that you the guy that you were talking to, you guys were talking about like I don't know fields arranged by purity. Like, what does everything ultimately reduce to?
Reductionism?
Well, you were saying that, like, basically, the idea is that, biology is applied to chemistry, and chemistry is applied to physics, and physics is applied to mathematics, which prompted me to, share that meme in that hangout, where everything is held up by the epistemologists, and the nihilists are just tickling them, trying to upset the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then also, like, I don't know, I caught the first half of Heretic Woman saying that she didn't think that philosophy had any practical purpose. And it was at that point that I decided I was going to check out, or else I would be up all night writing a response to Heretic Woman. Heretic
and a few other people I've ran across, some of them just don't see they use philosophy, but they just don't recognize it.
Well, a good example that I like to use is that here in the prairies, we have a lot of people who have the attitude towards theoretical physics or the theoretical sciences in general, or just research science as, not really having a practical application. A prime example would be my brother, who he didn't. Yes, Nate. Yeah, he's an idiot. He needed an MRI scan, and not more than 2 months later, he was bitching and whining about all the money that went into researching particle physics. I was like, you literally wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for the endeavors of particle physicists and their discoveries, because their discoveries directly led to the development of the MRI scanner, which detected like the blood clots in your head because of your fucking stupidity.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, they don't see the correlation between things. They don't
No,
see the bigger
it's
picture.
because there is a number of steps removed from the actual practical application, and people have the same attitude towards philosophy.
Right.
And I think you brilliantly brought that up. You know, like, don't you think that there is an applied ethic when it comes to medicine? Yes. Well, that's philosophy. Well, that's not the same kind of philosophy as like wondering about how it is that we should behave. Well, that's normative.
Yeah, that's normative ethics.
That's normative ethics. And then you can reduce that down to meta-ethics, which in turn you can reduce that down to...
I tried explaining it to her, but she...
To epistemology as well as, metaphysics. It's just a degrees of separation. Everything within philosophy, if you look at the ways that it's associated, step by step, and what it is that it touches upon, has an obvious practical application. Because for anything that is immediately practically applicable, you can always ask, like, why does this matter, or why is that the case?
But 4 years ago, I was in a similar position that Heretic was in. Right?
I know, and we were having the same conversation on MK's channel.
I mean, I didn't have
to no less.
I didn't have a big I had no understanding of philosophy, and I was well, ready to admit that, but I didn't really see a need for it. But after I looked into it, then I changed my mind, obviously, because I realized how important it actually really is. But it took a lot of reading. I mean, I do read on these topics.
It doesn't really take a lot of reading so much as it is joining the concepts, and that might require a lot of reading on an individual's part.
A lot of stuff that when you read in philosophy doesn't hit you immediately. It's not intuitive.
Well, it doesn't hit you immediately, and that's because it is so many steps removed from practical application.
Sure.
But as an example, when I was seeking funding for school, and I had to go to the Chief Peguis First Nations, you had to kind of make your case to the band as to why it is that they should supply funding for your university. And one of the questions they asked me was, like, what use is philosophy? And the thing that I was tempted to say was, are you seriously asking me that in a country where we all have the right to vote?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, if you ask what practical application does philosophy have when the whole democratic process is itself the product of a philosophical endeavor.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree there. Oh, by the way, mentioning about band, so I don't know if you saw my post, but I'll be getting a guitar in the next.
I did see that, and I was actually I was slightly ashamed. I was slightly ashamed of myself. I've been previously indisposed, like helping my grandma out and everything, but I will be getting the guitar back, and I was gonna send you a picture and ask if you wanted it.
Nah, that's you play it and we're gonna jam together. So yeah.
Yeah, I have an old Squire.
You have an acoustic or electric?
Electric.
What about Steve?
You've seen like half of the instruments in my house. You've seen my 63 Rickenbacker.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. I played you songs on it.
No, you didn't.
I did.
Okay.
It shows how much my love goes appreciated.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is, I don't know if this is foreplay for them or them arguing. I can't tell.
It's a bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's what you think.
As for I won't get into it, but anyways, the first song I want to be able to jam out with somebody, because I think it's one of the easier songs to play, is "For Whom the Bell Tolls." So if you can play the lead on that, Nicola, that'd be awesome.
I don't know how that one goes. Isn't that the one where
the lead isn't that bad.
I wasn't actually partial to guitar. I'll be frank. My ability to play guitar doesn't really extend much beyond my ability to play just to read music.
You can't play Metallica?
I can't play Metallica on guitar with shit, which is why I opted for bass. Like the instruments that I can play are in order that I learned them.
Well, I haven't played it in a long time, so I'm gonna have to like
I can play
practice.
with you.
But,
I played flute, then I tried guitar, and then I opted for bass. And there was a generation. There's kind of like a, I don't know, a traditional sense as to why I ought to play bass.
is it is going to an aught?
Not really, because it was just, my dad both had and presently has a band that played bass, as well did my grandfather. And we've passed the bass guitar down 3 generations now.
Did Spackle play? You were saying you play Spackle?
Yeah, I used to be in church band. I used to play the bass.
I was playing
She plays the organ.
And no, I used to play the bass and the guitar, and then my husband plays the guitar, and I started playing when I was 8, and I actually haven't been playing in a year and a half, but I have a guitar. I have a Paul Reed Smith.
Yeah. Like I said, we have the only condition is we all have to suck, and we're just going to have fun. Because I suck. I'm better than Ronnie, but I still suck.
I'm better than Ronnie. I mean,
Well, you've heard what Fiona's idea is, right?
Yeah, and I thought that wasn't a bad idea either. I would
she can do the trumpet rant.
Yeah, I would have to pick a weird instrument.
The best bit is my brother saw that, and he wants to make a YouTube channel so that he can do accordion rants.
That'd be
I'm
cool.
sorry, your brother wanted to do what?
Accordion rants.
Okay.
Where he's going to play accordion and then just say a bunch of racist, bigoted, and transphobic shit.
I just want to do like a cappella Metallica. That'd be awesome.
Favorite Metallica song? Go.
Which one?
Favorite Metallica song?
God, I don't have a favorite. I think one is probably one of my all-time favorites, Fade to Black.
Yes.
And I really like Seek and Destroy, which is that one.
That was the first Metallica song I learned on guitar.
Yeah, that's one of the first ones I learned too. I can remember the positions, but I have to relearn it. But I play Seek and Destroy.
Yeah.
Metallica was a bit too light for me. I was listening to like German death metal.
All right, Slayer. Favorite Slayer song? Go.
Freaking Danzig going on here.
Like when I say German death metal, I mean like Demon or Bogier or something.
South of Heaven.
South of Heaven's a good one.
I don't know.
Rain of Blood.
I mean, those are the most popular ones, but you want jam together, Stuart?
Yeah, we can. I can. Right now, I'm trying to get down the mandolin. Is what I'm trying to do.
Oh, mandolin is cool. Actually, can you the 3 more instruments that I'd love to try would be a mandolin would be cool, a dulcimer, and the hurdy-gurdy.
Yeah.
Are you trying to learn to play Copperhead Road?
No, no, those are just really odd.
Or Cocaine Cowgirl.
I like hurdy-gurdies. I'm sorry, they're an awesome sounding instrument.
Yeah, we did have a mandolin for a while. I don't know what happened to it, but something resulted in the neck of it bending and actually like separating from the body, and there's no way to actually repair it.
That is an instrument that I've been kind of wanting to pick up, was a mandolin. Like Laura has one for like just under 300, and it's not bad. I played it at Guitar Center. It's not that horrible.
Oh, you'll love this, Steve. I don't know why, but in his will, my grandpa left me his banjo.
Oh God!
So I